Hi everyone, my name's Kendall, and this is my final multimedia presentation, and I've decided to focus on the character Ariel from the Disney movie The Little Mermaid. The plot summary of the movie is the journey of Ariel, who's a 16-year-old mermaid, and she has a very fervent desire to be human and live her life above the sea. Her desire for this becomes much more intensified after she meets Eric, who is a human prince, and she immediately just falls in love with him. Her father, King Triton, is another important character of the story, especially in terms of looking at adolescent development, and he forbids any interaction between the human world and especially a relationship with a human prince. After she realizes that her and her father will always butt heads and she'll never be able to live the life that she wants, she decides to make a deal with the sea witch Ursula and trade her voice for human legs. The catch of this deal is that she only has 3 days to make the prince fall in love with her with true love's kiss, or else she will belong to Ursula for the rest of her life. Here's a quick little character introduction. Ariel is a 16-year-old headstrong, ambitious young girl, and her father is King Triton. This makes her Princess of the Sea. She does not have a mother in the film, but she does have 6 sisters. They don't play a very influential role in the story. They only really have a few lines. That's why I didn't include sibling relationships in this presentation, but it's good to note. And she is also very deeply in love with the human world, as I mentioned, and the prince, Eric. For context, I want to focus on family. A big part of this movie is that Ariel and her father argue several times throughout the film about going to the surface world and being involved with humans. She holds a fascination for humans and their world, whereas her father fears them and wants to keep her safe. The areas of psychosocial development I want to focus on include autonomy and intimacy. For autonomy, Ariel desperately seeks a life separate from her father's wishes. She loves the human world and is constantly seeking adventure above the water and adding items to her collection of human things that she keeps in a secret cave, knowing that she can't have her father know about this. And for intimacy, the role of Ariel and Prince Eric, she's very infatuated with him. It's pretty much all she can think about as soon as she sees him, and it only makes her want to be in the human world even more, knowing that her father would never allow it. So to look at the context of family even further, I've kind of briefly discussed her conflict with her father, but it's the first scene that we see in the movie is Ariel and her father butting heads with each other. She's missed a concert that's very important for her family and the kingdom to go look for human things in a sunken ship. Her father discovers this and becomes just enraged that she would, as he stated once again, go to the human world, something that he strictly forbids her to do. She then argues back and tells him that it's really not as dangerous as he believes, and ultimately she just flees the entire conflict. Some example quotes from the movie include, "I am never to hear of you going to the surface world again. Is that clear?" by King Triton when he's enforcing this rule. And then this is in another argument that's much more intense. "Contact between the human world and the mer world is strictly forbidden. Ariel, you know that. Everyone knows that." And then this last one is from a song called Part of Your World, where Ariel says, "Betcha on land they understand. Bet they don't reprimand their daughters." Some support from the text includes a few quotes here that address how parents view many issues of matters of right and wrong, not necessarily in a moral sense, but as matters of custom or convention. Adolescents, in contrast, are likely to define these same issues as matters of personal choice. Changes in the way adolescents view family rules and regulations may contribute to increased conflict between them and their parents. And authoritative parents are warm but firm. They set standards for the child's conduct but form expectations consistent with the child's needs and capabilities. These relate to the context because Ariel and her father view the matter of interaction with the human world very differently. They see it from completely different sides, and her wanting to be a part of this human world and him forbidding it is just a major part of contention for them. And also her father is very warm and caring. After these fights, he does express feeling bad and feeling like he had been too harsh with her, but he does take very authoritative action in attempting to have her obey them. So looking at autonomy now, we're going to focus on Ariel and the human world. She really wishes that she could live there despite her father's rule against it. And after they get into this intense fight that I had mentioned earlier, she then takes actions into her own hands. In order to get this, she makes a wish with the sea witch Ursula, where she trades her voice for human legs. And I kind of already mentioned this earlier in the beginning, but this does represent how she does try to take her own life into her own hands. And then examples from the movie include another quote from Ariel in a fight with her father where she says, "Daddy, I'm 16, I'm not a child anymore." And then another one when she's making the deal with Ursula, and she's kind of trying to decide if this is something that she wants to really go through with, and she says, "If I become human, I'll never be with my fathers or sisters again." And she ultimately decides to choose the human world and Eric over this relationship. And lastly, in the same song, Part of Your World, she says, "I just don't see how a world that makes such wonderful things could be bad." So she fervently disagrees with her father that the human world is a bad place. Some support from the text here. Part of being autonomous involves being able to make independent decisions. This is something that Ariel really strives for. Early adolescents are driven to separate themselves from their parents emotionally, and they turn their emotional energies to relationships with peers, in particular peers of the opposite sex. And then adolescents become increasingly likely to draw distinctions between aspects of their life that their parents have the right to regulate and those that they think are not really their parents' business. And then to relate this to the context, Ariel believes she should be able to make her own decisions about involvement with the surface world, and in order to obtain her own autonomy, she ultimately separates herself entirely by becoming a human and leaving the mer world behind. And then to look at the area of intimacy, this is going to be focused on Ariel's relationship with Eric. Her fascination for the human world only intensifies after she sees him. All she wants is not only a life in the human world, but a life with him now in it, and this becomes her focus as she falls in love with him. And then, as previously mentioned, she chooses to leave her life behind in the mer world to pursue him and this dream. Some examples from the movie include her telling him, "Daddy, I love him," when he tries to forbid her from being with him. And then, "Why, Eric, run away with you." This is her just fantasizing about living this life with Eric. And lastly, this is Ursula saying when she's trying to persuade Ariel to make this deal with her and leave her life behind, she tells her, "But you'll have your man. Life's full of tough choices, ain't it?" And then some support from the text includes the focus of activity during this phase is primarily on learning about themselves, as adolescents broaden their self-conceptions to include seeing themselves as a potential romantic partner. Adolescence is an especially important time in the development of close relationships because many of the capacities and capabilities that permit intimacy in adult relationships make their debut in adolescence. And to relate this to the context, Ariel seeks her own identity and autonomy. Her role as a romantic partner becomes increasingly important. It's pretty much all she can think about. The main focus of the movie here is, as I've stated, her relationship with Eric and her ability to lead her own life. And lastly, as an adolescent, Ariel's desire for a more intimate romantic relationship takes shape. So the main issue here, there really is two main issues, as I had said. They're really intertwined with each other. So the human world and a romance with Prince Eric are the main focus here. Ariel and her father argue time and time again over this, and this ultimately results in her running away and taking action into her own hands to have this life that she wants to pursue. And in order to do it, she pays a steep price with the Sea Witch to get it. And ultimately, she overcomes this issue by fighting for what she wants, and in doing so, she gets her prince, she gets her life in the human world, she makes amends with her father, and brings the two worlds together. So, Ariel is obviously not a typical adolescent. She's a mermaid. Her main issues involve a sea witch, and they also involve her father being king of the ocean. So, these are not at all typical things that adolescents deal with. But I chose her because her dilemmas are ones that are really commonly faced by adolescents in the real world. I know that they're, not similar situations, but the idea of them are things that I definitely struggled with as an adolescent. So to support this, I found a few articles. So to quote Bonsack here, during adolescence, youth begin to separate from their parents and find their own identity and think independently. Caregivers may either threaten or foster autonomy in adolescence. So, as we've seen through this presentation, Ariel's trying to gather her own identity, she wants her own independence, and her father is definitely not wanting to have her go through with this. He's really just being authoritative in the matter. And Russell and Bakken here say it is very important that parents set firm and clear guidelines for youth. It is also just as important that youth are given chances to be guiding forces in their own lives. And her inability to have an association with the human world at all leads her to basically run away. She's going to find it on her own. Basically, her father pushed her to this point in a way through their battling and his parenting style. And I didn't include this in the presentation, but there is a moment in the film after she has left and he can't find her where he says, "What have I done?" And he realizes that he had gone too far. And from a study that I found conducted by Connolly and Johnson, it states that the results support the view that romantic relationships are embedded within adolescents' ongoing social experience. And this relates to her relationship with Eric, which is just as important to the film. And this romantic relationship is just a huge part of Ariel's journey and the goal that she wants for her life. This is just my Works Cited page, and that is basically the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. I love this film. I've always loved it since I was a little girl, so getting to relate it to this class was really enjoyable. Thank you.